It is day 283 of the second Trump administration, and right now, President Trump's highly anticipated meeting with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping is underway in South Korea. The leaders of the world's two largest economies are discussing a trade truce after months and months of turmoil. Here's what we just heard moments ago as their meeting kicked off.
We will be having some discussions. I think we've already agreed to a lot of things, and we'll agree to some more right now. But President Xi is a great leader of a great country.
We do not always see eye to eye with each other, and it is normal for the two leading economies of the world to have frictions now and then. And in the face of winds, waves, you and I, at the helm of China-U.S. relations, should stay the right course.
Let's get right to MSNBC senior White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, who is in South Korea with the president. Also with us, Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, and Dan Nathan, CNBC contributor and co-host of the Risk Reversal podcast. Vaughn, you are traveling with the president. What can you tell us about this meeting so far and the trip?
Right. He's here in Busan, South Korea, and they've been in the room together for about 45 minutes now. I'm glad that you started off the show by calling it a trade truce that is being negotiated, Stephanie, because the president is touting this as a potential trade agreement, a trade deal. But really, when you look at the details of what is so far been publicly discussed about what the president is hoping to ultimately execute on, would amount to a lowering of temperatures, if you will, from the escalatory tariffs that he began putting in place back in February. He first increased tariffs on China and then ultimately increased those tariffs up to 145%, effectively placing an embargo on products coming into the United States. And in response, China began putting those export restrictions on numerous rare earth minerals. And this is where you have seen now suddenly the president lower the tariff rate down to 55%. There is also demands from China to have access to semiconductors manufactured in the United States. The president has said that he wants China to do more on fentanyl, but when asked exactly what he wants China to do on the illegal shipments of fentanyl, he didn't have an exact answer. He wants President Xi to sign off on a final TikTok deal. This is a moment here where the president is telling the American public that, you know, help in the agricultural industry is on the way, that China is going to begin buying soybeans again. But I think it's important to note through this entire conversation, Stephanie, is that this is the second trade war that he has initiated with China, and there was little fruit that came from the first trade war. He ended up actually providing $28 billion in taxpayer subsidies to make up for farmer losses. And he repeatedly, back in 2018, 2019, promised that American agricultural producers would see the benefits and that there would be long-term gains. He's made the same promise here in 2025. At this point here in October, though, we haven't seen that yet. That is why this meeting is such high stakes here for the president.
You've said Trump is negotiating through economic coercion. What do you mean by that?
This is, you know, the last time I was here, Stephanie, was in April of 2017 with then Vice President Pence, who, right, throughout his entire career had argued on behalf of free trade, right, against tariff threats and policies that ultimately he would have to become a defender of over his 4 years in office. And this is where the president here in 2025 went straight to not just tariff threats, but tariffs themselves. And I think that that is where, you know, if you look at South Korea, for example, the sixth largest trading partner for the United States, a very key geopolitical ally here up against the likes of North Korea and China. And the president this summer put a 25% tariff on South Korea. I was talking to a man who works in the makeup and skincare industry here, and he said that his company has been severely impacted because the U.S. tariffs on his products, and that they are now, you know, having to look potentially elsewhere for markets. And that is where the president, in exchange for lowering their tariffs to 15%, he had South Korea, the new president, effectively agree to give him $200 billion in cash. And so that's where, for the president, it's not so much negotiating as it is economic coercion. administration, and he has very, very deliberately said that he is getting victories through that means. But I think the question through all of this is, well, he is finding some allies like Britain and Italy, the EU, trying to settle or come to some sort of terms, including Japan as well, with him around the exchange of products and a tariff rate. China is the largest, second largest global economy here. And so far, the president, in both of his terms, has struggled to get them to commit or make any concessions or fold on any of the terms in which these high tariff rates that he has effectively, over the course of the last months, been able to get some wins out of other key allies. He hasn't been able to get that same sort of return out of the important global, competitor here in China.
And supposedly, China is the sole reason to have the trade war. Peter, what's your takeaway so far?
Well, obviously, we've got to watch the results and see what comes of this. But I think Vaughn summed it up pretty well. I mean, this is so critical for him. The economic consequences of this are massive. And the economy is his number one issue. It was what he ran on last year. It was what he promised to focus on. And so far, the results haven't shown much change. He bragged this week that it's the greatest economy ever, a phrase he likes to use, but it's basically very similar to the economy that he inherited. Inflation last month was 3%. Inflation when he took over was 3%. The market's going high. That's absolutely true, likely on an AI bubble, according to a lot of experts. It was going high, actually, under Biden as well. Job creation is not any greater than it was. So, I mean, and the fear of things going south with all these tariffs is still relatively high among a lot of economic players. So if he can't find some sort of a way to call a win here and reassure, those who are, going to be making decisions in the coming months about where to put their factories, where to build, their future, where to create jobs, then we're going to be in a prolonged period of uncertainty where, that tends to de-escalate or discourage, job growth and economic growth.
Dan, where are we on this trade war? Who has the upper hand?
It is a matter of leverage. When you think about it, we need them to buy our soybeans. We need them to sell us the rare earth materials and magnets, right? We don't know what the situation is with semiconductors. I think Vaughn just mentioned that. I mean, we put on export controls to sell our high-end semiconductors for their AI industry, but they put on import controls. They are pressuring their buyers, their technology companies, to buy local. President Xi, I think there's some reporting that they have a plan B that they're working on. They want to stimulate the tech industry in China. They already have a huge infrastructure there, but they are lagging behind in their ability to kind of create these, high-end AI models using the best technology, which we have. We are the exporter of 90% of them in the world.
How much are they catching up, though?
They're catching up. And, that's a country that they can make do on less. I think that's a really important point. And when they think about what they're trying to do, they're trying to push their technology around the world. We're trying to actually, put dampers or damper our ability to kind of sell to. We have export bans on the places in the Middle East, that sort of thing. So the Chinese are innovating right now, and I think that's a really important point. And I think there's a big debate in Washington right now whether we sell our technology to them, let them catch up to us. We definitely have a lead right now, or allow them or let them figure out how they're going to play catch up, but they're going to push their technology all around the world. And that's really the big debate, whether it's a digital belt and road. And the last thing I want to say, whether this is a truce or it's a deal, think about this. We put our...
Or neither.
Well, in 2018, Trump started putting tariffs on Chinese goods, and it kept on going throughout 2019, all the way to... We didn't have a framework for a deal until January of 2020. So if we walk away here and we bring back tariffs to where they were, let's say on April 1st, I don't know, you can call it a win, but what does it mean for our economy? I think Peter just mentioned that our economy is growing below trend over the last 20 years. I think GDP is supposed to be 1.8%. They also said that, inflation is running hot at 3%. So that, with a weakening labor market, is not a really great setup. And you think about this, I know you've been reporting on this for 6 to 9 months right now. Who bears the brunt of these tariffs. When you think about the tariffs are going on all this stuff, consumer products that our folks buy here, and it's really setting up to be a tough situation when you put it all together, because we do have an economy that is kind of on the brink. We have a Federal Reserve that just cut interest rates by 25 basis points. They were expected, that was today, they're expected to do it again in December. And they're saying,
Jay Powell said not so fast.
yeah, because they're worried about inflation, but they're also worried about this labor market. And that's the sort of thing that could keep this economy stuck right now.
Okay, I'm coming to you, Peter, but if they get any sort of truce, any sort of deal, we're going to see the markets shoot up, and this potentially.
I'm not sure. I think the markets have discounted that right now. And,
really?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we're at all-time highs. You know, the S&P 500 is trading up 16% in the year.
And it just keeps going higher. So this White House is going to argue we keep winning.
Well, I could see like a sell the news, not to get all CNBC on you right there. You know, you maybe get a sugar high a little bit, but the truth is going back to where we were back in April, and the S&P, the markets are much higher than they were right there.